Welcome back, guys, to Pregame.com's coverage of the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm Marco D'Angelo, joined with Stephen Nover. Stephen, we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference Finals, but we're really going to talk about a couple key players. And, obviously, right now, when you say the Miami Heat, it's LeBron James, Dwayne Wade.
It's LeBron. It's not Joel Anthony.
No. LeBron, I got to tell you, me and you like to talk and we like to rant and rave. I do not want to see the Miami Heat win the championship for a couple reasons. One, being a native Pittsburgher that didn't have an NBA team. The Cleveland Cavs were my adopted NBA team. I can't tell you how many trips I made to Cleveland. It was, 2.5-hour drive, road trip, go watch LeBron play. The way he handled last summer with the decision, the TV show, the whole 9 yards, I would have been okay with the TV show if he would have stayed in Cleveland. I think to make the production that he did and to break the hearts of that whole town, I just thought, to me, it came off classless to me. I know it got good ratings and everything else, and and he did some good with the money from it, but it's not the way I would have handled it. From an NBA fan, if the Heat win this, it's going to change free agency forever, because now you're going to have every year the crop of free agents are going to, in the back of their mind, are going to think, let's plot, let's figure out where we want to go. And it's going to end up having the people that have the room with the salary cap, and they can sign these people. You're going to end up having 4 or 5 really good teams, and then the rest of the league mediocre. And that's not good for the sport, in my opinion. What do you think?
Well, I kind of share that concern with you, although I agree with you that LeBron did not handle, quote, the decision with any class or any grace. It was in your face, which I don't like that style, being old school. And I think he's been getting bad advice, though. I don't think he's a bad person. He doesn't have any kind of criminal record. He's been charitable with some of the money that he's earned. So I think it's kind of an unfair backlash. To the point where people just hate and despise him, and I just think that's too strong of a reaction. He's the best player in the NBA, and I just think that there's too much of a backlash against him.
He's regarded as the best player in the NBA. Can you officially put that crown on him since he hasn't won? We're such a championship-driven, what have you done for me? He hasn't, he wasn't able to get it done in Cleveland. I know everybody says he didn't have the supporting cast, but he had an above average, they had some players there for him. Not like what he has now, obviously, but they couldn't get over the hump. And that hump seemed to be every year the Boston Celtics was, his undoing. There's been a lot of talk after the Heat beat Boston the other night that the emotion that LeBron showed. What was your take on that? Was that too satisfying for him to finally beat Boston? You got 2 more series if you're going to win a championship.
Yeah. Again, being old school, I don't like that kind of celebration when you haven't won a championship yet. I think they need to keep their emotions more in check, but that's not the way today's players are. As far as LeBron being the best player in the NBA, where is your argument that he is not because he has not won a championship that prevents him from having that distinction, in your opinion?
In all of sports, we can go to football. I think one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game was Dan Marino. But people don't look at Dan Marino the same as some of the other quarterbacks that have that Super Bowl ring.
Right, but you're using a football analogy, so we got to use an NBA analogy here. And I think it's impossible by yourself to win a title. You have to have a great supporting cast. He did not have that at Cleveland. He didn't have a particularly bright offensive coach, when he was at Cleveland. The greatest individual NBA player I ever saw was Wilt Chamberlain. He won 1 title, 1 championship when he was with the 76ers. And he had a good supporting cast. It just wasn't as great as the Celtics dynasty then. Now LeBron, no excuses. He has the great supporting cast. He has Dwayne Wade, one of the top 5 players in the league. He's got Chris Bosh, an all-star. So let's see if he earns that distinction now, because now his team is so much better than what he had at Cleveland.
Where do you put it in perspective of this is a failure or a success, does he have to win the championship this year for this season to be deemed a success?
Yes, I think so, which is the highest bar you can have. But you know, he's such a great player that that was the gamble he took by joining forces with Wade in Miami and bringing Bosh on board. I mean, you have to remember too, Marco, Michael Jordan. How long did it take him to win a title with the Bulls, a world championship? 5, 6 years?
Right.
Yeah, and he had to have the great supporting cast, and he had Scottie Pippen. Finally, they did it. And I think Michael Jordan is arguably the greatest player of all time. It takes a while, unless you just happen to be with some great team. And if you're that great of a player, you're usually not going to start out with a real great team.
If the Miami Heat do win the championship, is it tainted? I mean, he hasn't won the title yet, so he gets his ring. Does it mean as much? I mean, obviously it would have meant way more if he would have pulled it off in Cleveland. To go through all that suffering, build the team, I mean, like Jordan did. You know, he didn't win it for 6 years, but then he won it, and then they ran off how many. For him to win it, the way they, you know, people will say, well, you bought the ring. You know, you put the 3, you know, superstars on one team. You know, you had to win it. The only thing I think back in the day, and I go back to the year Jim Leland went to Florida, and they bought a World Series that year, you know. And the next year the team was dismantled. I mean, that, to me, that's one of the biggest travesties in sports. You know, yeah, those guys got a World Championship that year, but, you know, their World Series ring. But what did it mean? It was bought and paid for almost. But on the same token, we see the Yankees try that almost every year, and they don't win a championship every year too. So you still got to go out and execute no matter what. But I think it would have been a sweeter, more fulfilling accomplishment if he would have done it in Cleveland.
Wouldn't have happened in Cleveland. I don't think they would have got over that hump in Cleveland, and I think perhaps that factored in his decision to go to Miami because he wants to get that championship. He wants his legacy. I think, Marco, it's only tainted if he doesn't win the championship. I mean, years from now, if they win the championship, people are going to remember that team. Well, they had the 3 superstars, but hey, the rest of the team wasn't that great or anything, and they beat the Celtics. They beat a very good Bulls team that was coming on. They beat a solid team from the West. So they're not going to just fixate on all these guys bought themselves a championship because all these free agents got together to join this team. So no, I don't think so.
Situation to me, I think that, you know, they definitely have to get to the finals because, you know, I mean, if he gets to the finals with the Heat, at least he did get to the finals once with the Cavs. So you do have that. But, you know, again, they're going to expect to win. Do you think he has any kind of letdown slaying the dragon, so to speak, of the Boston Celtics? Because, you know, I mean, there's no question. You go back to the last year, that series, the Celtics were into his head. I mean, you know, people questioned his heart. They questioned him quitting and everything else against the Celtics. So for them to get past the Celtics, that was, you know, a big, big series for him. Now he's got to face a totally different team. I mean, the knock on Boston was they were old and they weren't deep. I mean, everybody questioned the trade when they got rid of Perkins that had hurt that team, and they were banged up in that series. Now they're playing a young team, a healthy team, and they've got one of the rising superstars in the game, Derrick Rose, who was the MVP this year. So how does that make a new challenge for Michael Jordan? Or Michael Jordan, we're making a reference for LeBron James, because here is the guy that, you know, is, you know, we always, every year there's an heir apparent, you know, the next coming. Well, right now, Derrick Rose is that prototype. I mean, this guy's all over the court. He can play above the rim. He can shoot from the outside, drive the lane. I mean, he is the ultimate package. Is that the motivation for LeBron?
Well, yeah, Derrick Rose is a great player, but back to LeBron in Miami, will they suffer a letdown? I would say that possibility really existed if they would have played the next day or even within 2 days. But no, there's more of a gap now. So they've had time now to digest that victory. Very satisfying for them. But now, they're professionals. LeBron is not a rookie. I mean, Dwayne Wade is not a rookie. They know the task in front of them. And by the same token, the Bulls were kind of extended by Atlanta. 6 games by them. So I don't think, the way the NBA has it, the way they space these games out, I don't think fatigue, especially for these younger type teams compared to the Celtics, the Bulls, and the Heat, that you can use fatigue as a handicapping tool here.
Yeah. Well, Miami really only got 24 hours extra because they closed it out on Wednesday and Chicago closed theirs out on Thursday. So they got 1 day advantage, not like Dallas sitting waiting for the,
right.
We're taping this on, Friday, and they have to play Game 6 yet of Memphis, Oklahoma City. There could be a Game 7. We don't know. And
right.
Dallas is sitting there waiting since, they dismissed the Lakers last Sunday. So,
but as far as the East, I think both these teams will have had ample time to recuperate from their semifinal victories, and it'll come out who's the better team. That won't factor.
I think that this is going to come down to, pure and simple, it's going to be the Bulls' defense against the Miami offense. I think that's where because one of the knocks, that's the knock on any superstar, is that they like to score, they don't like to play defense. So I think if Chicago is able to contain the big three or two of the big three, and I know right before we went on air, anytime you talk about the Heat, it's Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and then it's Chris Bosh. He's the X factor. When he has a good game, the Heat are hard to beat because now you've got 3 legitimate scorers. You can't double team everybody, and when he's open and can take stuff away, can take some shots away and take the Heat off of, excuse the pun there, but I think he's the X factor. If he has a good series, Miami does win this. I'm not saying that Miami can't win it without him having a good series, but if he has a good series, Miami wins this easily.
Yeah, and consequently with the Bulls, I agree with you about Derrick Rose, great player, but do you really trust anybody else to really step up and kind of fill the Dwayne Wade role to LeBron James? Who is the Dwayne Wade on the Bulls to Derrick Rose? Carlos Boozer, who?
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. I mean, Carlos Boozer was the guy I was going to bring up, but he hasn't been consistent.
I wouldn't trust him.
He's been either really good or, last night, he was the catalyst last night to get that game going for the Bulls. I mean, he came out and put down 10 in the first quarter.
He's also been asleep at times. And
and so, again, when you get the X factor of somebody else that can take that heat away, it's only going to make the game better for a Derrick Rose. I think it's going to be a great series. I think this goes a minimum of 6 games, probably 7. We talked in the other video, I think there's value with the Bulls. I'll tell you where I really think, just going a little more wide scope, where I think there's really the value. I think this is going to be a hard series no matter what. These two teams are going to take it to one another. I like the Dallas Mavericks. I think the Dallas Mavericks are sitting back. They've had an easy time of it. I mean, they put away the Lakers in 4, an embarrassing factor. They've had a week of rest. That first game's going to be rough for Dallas because they've sat for so long. But Dirk is playing at a level right now in the playoffs I have not seen him play before. He's a great player that I think is playing at the peak of his game right now. He knows the window of opportunity for him is closing too. And the one thing about this Dallas Maverick team, they've always been able to score points. That's never been a problem with the Mavericks. The problem's always been, defense. Defense may be their strong suit on that team this year. And I think they're going to catch a break no matter who they get out of the Oklahoma City-Memphis series, because that was such an up-and-down series. Those teams, the 2 overtime games, that grueling 3 overtime game. I think the rested Dallas team for the 7 games and playing good defense is going to frustrate either one of those offensive-minded teams. And I think Dallas comes out of the West, and with that experience, if the Bulls do get by the Heat, the Bulls, even though they're in the championship series, could suffer that letdown because they haven't learned how to win the big one yet. We saw the Cavs make it to the finals and then go quietly in the night. So many times you see those teams that get there for the first time don't succeed. I think that would be a huge advantage with Dallas if they catch Chicago, and if they catch Miami, I think Dallas can play with Miami. So I think the value's on Dallas to win the championship.
Well, we talk about LeBron having a stigma of having never won it. Dallas has never won anything. They've been known as a soft choke team. That's their history in the playoffs. Well, they're trying to change that history this year, and so far they're doing a very good job. I've always thought they were a classy team. I think they handled themselves very well against the Lakers in that last game of that series. And Dirk is playing extremely well at a high level, which is saying a lot because he always usually plays at a high level. But I think a key for Dallas, Marco, is they've gotten tougher inside. At the center position, they always were kind of soft there, but they're tough there now. And those teams in the West, though, it's tough because they've all been play-on teams. I've liked to play Dallas on the road this year. I've always liked to play Memphis as a dog. They've been just a goal mine, a goal mine. And I like Oklahoma City a lot. They may be the best team in the West. They had a tough time with Memphis, and I give Memphis credit for that, but I really like Oklahoma City, and like Dallas, they've paid dues. They gave the Lakers a very tough series last year. So they're at that level where they may be ready to win it all. So
it's going to be interesting. Out of the possible teams, there's 5 possible teams left. I think Dallas presents the best value to me, to win it. But we'll see. It's going to be an interesting matchup with either way with LeBron James and Derrick Rose. I'm excited for it. This is the time of the year, NBA playoffs. So let's see what happens. I hope you enjoyed the video. He's Stephen Nover. I'm Marco D'Angelo. We'll be back next week. We'll be previewing some more games. We'll be back with RJ next week.